I'm Dan Galusha and welcome to another edition of Dan's Fishing Tales. Today we're going to be talking about B&M poles. I know you're thinking rods, but the company's actually B&M poles. And with me is Don Banning, expert, master shoreline angler and outdoor writer.
Boy, what an accolade, Dan. I want to work harder to live up to that too.
He does a lot of shoreline fishing, and he got me acquainted with B&M rods. And B&M poles, I should say, but as I said, they're rods, so you could call them either thing. They're B&M, that's what it is. And I'm going to show you one first, and why we're going to talk about this is because they got a lot of different models, and a lot of you folks don't know that much about this company, but it's a very good company, and they're good rods. And here's the thing about them. They are known for crappie, but they will catch a ton of different species. In fact, this is called a crappie wizard. Okay, you think strictly crappies, right? Yeah, then why am I fishing that? That is a natural forage bait, FT shad, rigged on a TTI Daiichi. It's called a copperhead, a bleeding bait copperhead hook. That is for bass, right? Well, believe it or not, take a look at some of these photos right here. Been catching some big crappie on that. So maybe it's because it's called a crappie wizard, so it's just got a who knows. But no, I do a lot of bass fishing with this thing, especially on finesse worms. I like this. It has more of a stiffness that you have other than most crappie rods. So this one, I go mainly with like finesse worms or something of that sort. And again, just for the heck of it, I'm actually trying this because it is so weedy out here, and I've been having some success, both bass and crappie. Don, you got one there too you want to show them.
This is a Uncle Buck's. It's advertised as Uncle Buck's crappie rod by B&M. And there again, I've used it probably more for bass than I have crappies. It's medium light, 6 foot long. It's got an ideal action for our finesse type fishing we do. I got a worm on it this time. I'm using a 4-inch natural forage worm. And with a head, the head is a bee fishing H2O head, and it isn't weedless. So I'm going to switch later on to a weedless hook because the conditions are tough, like Dan mentioned. But this rod, I've used this rod for like 3 years. I've caught an awful lot of fish, and like I said, it's a good finesse rod, and it transcends whether you're fishing bluegills or crappies right on up to bass. And it's one of their more outstanding rods, and it's very affordable too.
And since he mentioned bluegills and crappies, the one that I do use for the panfish like that is this one right here. This is a Russ Bailey 8 foot, and it's kind of purty, isn't it? People say it's purty. Yeah, well it is. And I'm using a weighted Mr. Crappie float, and I drift this right here. And this is called a wolf finky. Now the wolf finky is really a rat finky with a tungsten head. Gives it a little bit more weights, and there's a lot of situations you want to do this. I know, you're thinking ice fishing? Yes, I use this for open water fishing, for panfish. And I'm going to be doing something with some new Kickin' Bass product, but I'm not going to tell you about it. That will be later, because right now I'm testing it. As Ron Reisenhover said, I'm a guinea pig, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be testing that, but I can't tell you about it because it is a new product. And as I said, I really like this rod for the panfish. So Don, you've got what is my favorite B&M, and I forgot to bring it because it's my finger jigging rod, and that's a Sam Heaton Super Sensitive.
Yeah, the Sam Heaton, that's probably one of the first rods I started using with B&M. It's 7 foot long, and I think it's rated as medium light, and there again, I've used a lot for panfish. In fact, today I've got a little crappie lure on. You can see I'm using a bobber, and even though I'm casting, this is a Betts Mr. Crappie rattling bobber, which I really like. And I'm able to get good distance with this. Plus, it has what we call in the industry good backbone. And I'll tell you, if you ever use this for bass, you'd be sold on it. Besides pan fishing, last year I did a lot of wacky worm rigging fishing this, and I had a ball using the Stanley T-Wacky jig heads and a 6-inch, or a 4-inch natural forage. They have what they call the Q worms. But anyway, I advise people or recommend trying this, and I think you would really be sold on this one too.
That's Sam Heaton, as I said. That's my favorite. I think you've probably seen some of my videos in the past where I've actually used that for finger jigging because, as you know, the T-Shad is probably one of my favorites. I'll also use the I think it's about a 2-inch power minnow for finger jigging, and then I use the smaller H2O precision head, which is made by Bee Fishing, and I rig it with that. And well, as I said, just watch the finger jigging videos. I'm not going to go into that. It does take a spinning rod, and that was how originally I kind of started working with B&M, is because I was looking at a rod that I could go with. I'd always used the Shakespeare Agility, and I wanted another one that I could go with to use this for finger jigging. So the company got a hold of me and they said, well, we're going to send you some to try out and see what you think. And it just so happens that Sam Heaton has been the best one they've had. I've really liked that. And Don, have you got any others there?
No, I just had these two today. I usually bring 3 or 4 different B&M poles, but or rods, as I should say, even though it's a pole company. But I always believe in kind of covering the spectrum. And let me add one thing, if I may, Dan. Over the years, in all the seminars I've been doing, like for 30 years, I found a lot of people start out using too heavy a rod if they're specifically after crappies or bluegills. But I call it overpowering the fish, and I think you should match the action of your rod to what you're after. So a medium light would be really a good rod that would span the spectrum. But the thing is, we're out for fishing for fun. If you want to keep a few fish to eat, it's fine, but make the most out of it. And by using the correct rod action, whatever, and I think you're going to go a lot farther. You're going to have a lot more enjoyment.
In fact, while we're talking about the different types of fish that you can use these, there is one that we haven't mentioned, which is the TCB, which is actually the rod that I first started getting acquainted with B&M because Don had been telling me about it, and I wanted to get a hold of one of these. And it's put up basically for trout, crappie, and bass, thus the name TCB, and it's a Leland's TCB. And I like that. I tried it for finger jigging. It's just not what I wanted for that. It's 6.5 foot, correct?
Right.
Okay, and it's got a split handle type thing. It's just a different type of handle. Just does not work for my finger jigging, but it will work for the finesse worms. And basically, when you think of B&M, you're thinking of more finesse fishing.
Correct, right.
It's not your heavy flipping pitching stuff like I do off the deck of the bass boat. It's finesse, and I even use that on on the bass boat. It makes no difference. I mean, if I need to catch fish, I'm going to fish however it's going to take to get it, and that's what you do. But you definitely want to check these B&M rods out. People that have not really known that much about them, such as we got a young man, Logan Frost. He used one, he really liked it, got a hold of my TCB, and oh man, this is great, but he had to ask the wife to see if he could get one, and Jamie said yes. So Jamie was a good girl. She let him get his rod. And there was a lot of bantering going back and forth. It was fun though. And so anyway, I guess he's got his TCB by now, because he was very happy with the one that he had, and he had never heard of B&M. He just happened to pick one up on a trip, got a hold of it, said, hey, these are really nice rods, and bingo, B&M had another fan. So, and I think we've run into that quite a bit.
Right. I want to add one thing, Dan. You mentioned TCB, trout, crappie, and bass, but it's technically trout, crappie, and bluegill, but they work for bass too. And that was one of my fairly early rods, getting acquainted with B&M years ago. And it's an ultralight, and I'll tell you, it adds a ton of enjoyment to the fishing, whether you're after panfish or bass.
Oh.
I'd recommend it highly too.
With me, the B's got to be for bass.
Well, that's all right. I wouldn't contradict that either necessarily.
Well, that's what I said. With me, if there's a B, it's got to be bass.
Right. Yeah.
So, you got something else?
One more thing I want to add. I want to say this. I'm not trying to flatter Dan, but he is the most versatile fisherman I ever fished with, and I've fished with a lot of them. And he's mainly bass, but I'll tell you, I've seen him go out for catfish, bluegills, whatever, and he adapts so good, and he always does really well. And I've learned a lot fishing with Dan over the many years I've known him. Well,
I'll tell you, if it swims, I'm after it. I've even caught dogfish, but I have not got my mermaid yet. Doggone it. But I don't want her to get hooked. Anyway. So, you got anything?
No, that's it.
He's got it done. So until next time, get out on the water and have a great day of fishing.